Today is obviously for the people that know me regularly, and Nacoa are already in the building, which is good. People that see me that do these lives regularly will know that I do like a series on here called Curiosity. Hello Shirley in Canada. And today is a bit of a special one because I wanted to do it for Nacoa. So what I'm going to do, the way that this is going to go today is, I think over like the last, last few months, I've had like quite a high amount of new people following. And what I didn't actually realize is that a lot of people don't actually know that I'm an ambassador for Nacoa. Nacoa is the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. And it's predominantly a helpline that anyone affected by a parent's drinking can call and speak to a trained helpline counsellor. And I've been with Nacoa now. I found Nacoa. When did I find Nacoa? I don't know, for quite a lot of years, like 7 or 8 years, I would say at least. I was looking actually the other day. I got the Volunteer of the Year award in 2016. So that was 6 years ago. So I think that was like a couple of years in. So let's say like 8 years. And what I want to do today really is talk about the journey that I've been on, sort of a little bit up until I found Nacoa, but when I found Nacoa as well, and then to where I am today, because, and we'll do some questions as well. So, and I'll try and pick up some of the stuff in here. And I see what's great is that we got people joining from all over the world. I think I just saw Belgium and somebody in South Australia here, which is really good. And look, people are affected by their parents drinking all over the world. So this will be relevant to everybody. So yeah, I want to talk about when I found Nacoa, and that was what I was going to say. The reason it's so important to me, the reason that I guess I'm so passionate about the work that Nacoa do is that because so much, or practically everything that I know and everything that I learn and share with people really comes from what I learned from finding Nacoa and what Nacoa taught me. And then I kind of gone on to do the work that I do today. But it all started when I found Nacoa. And the huge realization I had when I found them. And so I guess the best thing to do is to just talk to you a little bit about that journey. And then, like I say, we'll do some questions and stuff as well. When I walked into Nacoa, I was like about a year sober, I think. So I've been sober for like a year, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. And to be honest with you, I didn't walk into Nacoa because I was the child of an alcoholic. In fact, I certainly wasn't saying that I was a child of an alcoholic back then. I walked into Nacoa because I was identifying as an alcoholic. That was the term that I was using for myself. And I wanted to give back. And I sort of knew that I wanted to volunteer with children. And I knew that I was identifying as an alcoholic. So I searched on Google to see if anything existed that brought the two together. And I found Nacoa. At no point when I found them online did I think, wow, child of an alcoholic like I was. I sort of thought that, but I certainly didn't see myself as being affected as a child of an alcoholic. And in fact, what I believed about my own addictions is that I had a genetic predisposition at that stage, is what I believed. I felt like I was born this way and I was always destined to be who and what I was, and that I was just unlucky. And actually, I used to get quite passionate about the whole nature-nurture debate. I used to say that my childhood was pretty idyllic, and so it can't be anything to do with nurture, right? It must be, we must be born this way. And I enrolled on the training with Nacoa. At the time, it was like 3 days, I think, in-person training. And literally, like probably within the first hour of the first session, I had to completely change everything that I ever believed about myself, but particularly about my addiction as well, because what became clear to me is that I was a classic child of an alcoholic. All of the traits that I thought were just who I am and what, the way that I am, I realized that they were they were traits of a child of an alcoholic. And I just see somebody's donated £10, which is great. I've put the donation thing on for Nacoa. So if you feel at any point moved to donate to Nacoa, that's amazing. And even if you don't feel move to donate to them, then I would encourage you to go and look at the website because it's incredible. And really, it was from that realization that I had about myself. It changed everything. The first thing that I would say is that it gave me my power back. I felt up until that stage of my life that I was defective, that there was something wrong with me, that I needed fixing, that I was broken, all of these things. And in seeing that it was because so much of my experience made sense, right? So much of my pain made sense when I looked at my experience. For me, it gave me power back. I remember speaking to Hillary, who's the CEO, one of the founders of Nacoa. And I remember saying to her, like, this is a thing, isn't it? Like, being the child of an alcoholic is actually a thing, right? And she's like, yeah, this is a thing. And it just changed my life. And I remember thinking that, like, my dad died when I was 9 years old, and I spent my whole life trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. I spent my whole life trying to figure out why I felt the ways that I did. And, well, actually, I didn't even try figuring it out. I ran away from them. I ran away from everything that I felt. Shame is like a huntsman following you, right? Telling the world that they're going to find out. And so I never shared any of it. I kept it all to myself, and I thought I was the only person on the planet. And having discovered Nacoa accidentally, just because I wanted to volunteer with something, it lit something in me. I was like, what? When my dad died at 9 years old, why the hell did nobody tell me what this was going on? Why, when I was a child, did nobody let me know that my experience made sense? Why the hell have I accidentally, after a life full of 25 years at that stage, full of pain, why have I accidentally stumbled across something that's changed my life in so many ways? And I remember saying to Hillary not long after that, actually, my second to last daughter was about to be born, and she's 6 now, so this is how long ago that was. I remember saying by the time she's 10 years old, I want everyone in every school to know what it is to be a child of an alcoholic. So we've got 4 years left. We're getting close. We are getting close. And from that, COA as a thing was born out of that, right? Being the child of an alcoholic is a thing, was born out of that. And actually, what I did is I worked on the helpline for, I don't know, a number of months until my daughter was born, actually. And then I wasn't able to get to Bristol anymore to go and work on the helpline. Let me say something about the helpline as well. I never had it in me at that stage to pick up the phone. I was too terrified to do it because I felt like I might sort of break down if I ever had to speak to a child. I didn't, there was loads of things going on. I didn't feel like I had the right to answer the phone to a child of an alcoholic. But I think I was just terrified of breaking down in front of them, really. So I used to go in and answer emails, and that gave me space to be able to do that. And when I couldn't go to the helpline anymore, I was like, I can't leave. I can't just not do this anymore. So that's when I started making videos. The first video I ever made went on YouTube. It was called COA is a Thing. Actually, no, that's not true. I started the blog first. So I started COA is a Thing blog. So I started writing my experiences on the internet and just putting them on there. coaisathing.com it was called. And Kerry's here. Hey. coaisathing.com, and I put it on there, and I just started sharing some of my experiences, and I thought, if people can read this, then that would be great. And people started reading it, and then a couple of people said to me, I wish I could share my story like you, but like, I don't know, my mum or my dad is still alive, and so I wouldn't be able to do it. And I was like, well, why don't you send it to me, and I'll post it anonymously on COA is a Thing. And then the next thing within, I don't know how long, it wasn't very long, we'd shared over 100 stories on coaisathing.com of different people that had experienced the stuff that, finally getting to have a voice. And it was from coaisathing.com, the blog website, that I made the first video for YouTube. The first video I made for YouTube, I sellotaped my phone to a ladder and stood in front of it and talked about how I now recognize that being a COA is a thing. And I put it on YouTube. And then I started doing quite a few videos from there. And then at that time I had no social media whatsoever. I didn't do social media, so to speak. So then I started a Twitter account, I think, originally. And then Facebook account, and then eventually an Instagram account. And then everything has kind of grown from there. COA is a thing, I think it's still there. I think because you have to, I pay for it sort of yearly. I'm sure that it just updated. But most of the stuff now, like the Nacoa website's just a whole different ball game now. So it's almost like it's grown from that. And that's really how my journey with Nacoa started. Alongside that, Liam Byrne got involved with Nacoa. Liam Byrne, the MP, got involved with Nacoa. It was either like the same time as me or just after. And then we started like the whole sort of political campaign, if you will. The first ever of its kind globally. The first ever all-party parliamentary group specifically for children of alcoholics. COA is a thing, is still going. I'm sure it is. COA is, yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. So there's still loads of stories that you can go and see there. So yeah, like the political, the all-party parliamentary group started, and we started to create real sort of meaningful change, really, for children affected by parents drinking. And that was led and spearheaded by Nacoa. And I want to say this, I'm going to say it because it's on my own channel, so I feel like I can say it. We used to get almost bullied by other charities. Bullied is too strong a word, so I don't want to use that. But we were shut down. I remember the first time we were in Parliament, somebody from a well-renowned addiction charity stood up and said, we should not be treating children affected by parents drinking in isolation. We should not be having phone calls with them if nobody around them, none of their parents know that they're having it, and was like so against it. And they said things like, we know that children of alcoholics don't talk and won't talk. And I remember just sitting in there and I was like so angry and felt so let down, like that one of the leading addiction charities at the time believed fundamentally that a child's right to support should be based on whether their parent or not is willing to engage with the services themselves. But we changed it. Slowly we changed it. And, we started to gain real momentum online. We started to gain a following, because at the heart of what Nacoa has done, and it remains true today and it's always been the case, and this is why people love Nacoa when they find Nacoa, Nacoa cares about nothing else, and this is to its detriment sometimes. Nacoa cares about nothing else apart from the children that they serve. Over the years, Nacoa has lost out on there is an American Nacoa, but our reach is sort of global as well with our online stuff. To its detriment sometimes, Nacoa will follow what is right for the child, for the children or the adult children that engage with the services, particularly with the helpline, and will not, and Hillary, the absolute powerhouse that she is, will never do anything that goes against what is right for the children, that call the helpline. So we remain an anonymous helpline that doesn't show up on the bill. We will fight and continue to fight, because a lot of people don't. And this is for like funding streams and a whole bunch of different reasons. People won't necessarily fight for the children whose parents haven't yet engaged. So many of the children that we support, their parents are not engaging in services. They're not, in any kind of recovery. Their children's right, their right to healing, their right to understanding their pain and their experience should not be dependent on whether their parents are engaging in services. I don't care what anybody says, that will remain. And that's why we have the helpline in the way that we do. Substance abuse disorder is recognised as a mental illness. Children of mentally deserve a voice. Yeah, my kids included. It's so difficult to break through the age of those who are shrouded in shame. Yeah, and shame's a big, big bearing of this. And I want to talk about get into talking about some of my experiences and how I've evolved in my own understanding of what I see and the ways in which addiction is talked out of there. The first realization that I've had is my experiences as a child, and the children that are affected by a parent's drinking experiences as a child are really difficult to hear. If you sit down and listen to somebody talk about their experiences of their parent, some people will flat right deny it because they can't comprehend it, and some people will not be able to be around it. And I think as a result, one of the mistakes that's made is that we think that by softening the language, right, because softening language protects us, right, makes us feel less pain when we hear other people's experience. When we change the language, make it less direct, and we say things like we're making it more compassionate and making it easier to digest, that's all about us. I think that's all about us. When I was a child, I wanted somebody to tell me the truth of what was going on. The amount of times people, behind the guise of compassion, behind the guise of trying to help me, and it was always from a good place, or nearly always from a good place, wouldn't let me see my experience in its entirety for what it is. Everything was swept under the carpet all the time. They're doing their best, and they love you and all that stuff, and all of that stuff is true, right? But you know what? When I engaged with Nacoa for the first time in the way that I did, and I started to talk about my experience, I remember saying to Hillary, right? I remember saying to Hillary, you know what, I feel a bit angry with my dad sometimes. And I know, like, it's an addiction and it's not his fault. But I sometimes just think, like, was I not good enough? And I remember Hillary just going, that makes sense. And I remember pausing. I'm waiting for but he did his best, and it wasn't because he didn't love you, and nothing came back. And like the freedom and the release that I felt in that, like what, I'm allowed to just have that difficult feeling, that difficult experience without having to try and mellow it or numb it or make it any easier for the people around me to digest. And I think that's one of the mistakes that we make in the conversation. We want to make it easier for us and the people around us to digest, and what children want and need is the truth. Because the core wound that I received as a child because of my dad's drinking was that I'm not good enough and that I'm not lovable in and of myself. That's the reality. Now, of course, as an adult, I can apply my rational brain to that and say, there's 1,000,001 different reasons why this happened, and he did his best, and I can do all of that, and I did that all of my life. Why? Because I didn't have a choice but to do anything else. What I needed was the truth. And look, Jess, the highly sensitive coach here, said, I think I never accepted I was a COA because my dad refused to be labelled as an alcoholic. And I think lots of children see the term child of an alcoholic and just go, wow, like that's me, this is a thing, that's me. And I think sometimes when we soften language, because it's easier for us to digest, we lose some of the freedom that comes with it. Which kind of leads on to what I began to learn. What I began to learn when I opened up to my experiences. I began to realize that far from being broken and far from there being something wrong with me, I'd been dealing with the world and reacting to the world in the only way that I knew how, based on my experiences, because nobody ever told me that my experiences made sense. And I've learned all of this from Nacoa, and I've learned it from Nacoa. Do you know the main way that I've learned it from Nacoa? Not because Nacoa sit me down and go, here's the deal, right? Here's what it is with you. Learn this. They don't do that. They certainly educate. But the main thing that Nacoa have done for me is give me the dignity and the autonomy to make sense of my experience in my own way. And they continue to do that. And I think that autonomy is important. To not be sat in front of somebody and somebody tell me about my experience and tell me what I should think and feel about my experience. But for somebody to metaphorically hold my hand, let me explore it, free from their judgment of what I should perceive from it. And I remember learning that about the helpline. And, you're not here to push your experience onto other people. Isn't this softened language a form of manipulation? Look, I think the word manipulation has negative connotations to it, so people will think that, you know, if you say that they're manipulating. But I think it's a way of getting around the truth in a way that's easily digestible for other people. But we have to give children the truth of their experiences. You know, sometimes I go into kids' schools and stuff, and they'll say, you know, the kids are a little bit too young to be talking about this, and I'm like, no. They're too young for you to be able to have the power to be able to be in there, in around them when they're talking about it, perhaps. But they're not too young. If a child's going home every night to a parent that drinks too much, someone better talk to them about it. Otherwise, they're going to come up with a reason. And when they come up with the reason, it will be about them, right? And I began to learn this about myself, right? And this isn't even about blame. It's not like I found Nacoa and it's like I could blame my dad and his drinking for all of the problems. Actually, I would remove the idea of blame completely, because, you know, you could trace that back and trace that back and trace that back. Does Nacoa have an advocacy? Let me answer some of these questions before I move on, otherwise I miss them. Does Nacoa have an advocacy pack that I can send to my son's school? I really want to advocate. Yes, they do. Go on the website, nacoa.org.uk, and you can get all of the packs there. Josh, hearing that they're too young has been such a barrier to me with schools. Look, I think a lot of the problem for schools, actually, because they're all well-meaning, incredible. The teachers are only there for one reason normally, and that's because they love the kids. The biggest barrier for all of the schools is that they're so overstretched, and so if they open the can of worms, then they've got to kind of deal with it, and they're too under-resourced. Because we exist in a society, by the way, let's say this, and let's make this very clear. We exist in the England and Wales anyway, in the UK. Funding was given to Nacoa, £500,000 was given to Nacoa over 2 years, which might sound like a lot of money, but ain't a lot of money. It's not a lot of money at all, not in the grand scheme of things. As we came out of the pandemic, the government have cut that funding. There is no funding for children affected by parents drinking whatsoever. Let me say that again. There is no designated, targeted funding for children of alcoholics. In the worst possible time, that funding has been cut and does not exist. We live in a country that does not fund remotely, not a penny, children affected by parents drinking. Now, the government will tell you that they are putting up, I don't know, it's a substantial amount of millions for addiction services. Some of that will go for children of alcoholics. That's not strictly true. What will happen is that anybody that's engaging with the services that's struggling with addiction will probably find the family approach amazing. I'm glad they do. That's absolutely brilliant. But it still means there's no target. So that big pool of children that live with a parent that's not engaging in the services, that, you know, doesn't engage with social services because they're not making enough safeguarding problems for them to be engaging with them. Those children, no support, none, zero from the government. Yeah, zero. And it should be a scandal, but it's not. I've got to get my kids to school. Thank you for this. Hope to catch the end later if it's lives available. Yes, this will go on my profile. Josh, do you have any recommendations for a struggling 7-year-old boy, emotional literacy, or any appropriate resources for learning about what you're speaking on now? I would support them to engage with the Nacoa, either the helpline, they can do it through emails, go on the websites. There's lots of different ways for them to be able to interact, and they're going to speak with a real person who's trained as a helpline counsellor, and is going to be able to get them to explore that, right? And there'll be a level of distance from them to that person. It'll be completely anonymous. That would be my advice for that. It's true, I'm a heroin addict and my 18-year-old son needs more help than I'm capable of giving. Yeah, and you deserve support, right? And it is harder to find help, yeah. So yeah, let me go back to what I was saying now. I picked up, and I'll keep trying to pick up and by the way, I'm seeing donations coming in and it's incredible. The child of an alcoholic in me, right? The codependent, the part of me that's desperate to be liked by everybody finds it, and I think this is part of Nacoa's problem as a whole sometimes, by the way, finds it difficult to ask for money, because there's a big part of me that just wants you to like me more, and I wouldn't want you to think that I'm getting for money. But Nacoa relies solely on donations. Let me say this again because it is important. Solely on donations and volunteers. the government give us nothing. Also likely that those kids not supported will end up costing the government more as they present the physical symptoms of trauma. I have no doubt in my mind about that, particularly when you look at some of the statistics of what happens to children affected by parents drinking. And I want to talk about some of my experiences with that, right? What I started to realize about myself, and I talked about that shame that I lived with for a long time, and that all of the difficult pains and the things that I struggled with in my life, growing up into being a young man, right? Having somebody like Nacoa metaphorically hold my hand, right, to explore these things. Well, the amount of power that started to come back in my life, because I started to be able to be compassionate for myself, because I realized that so much of what I struggled with was the wounding of what I've experienced, right? Changed my life. Hillary's here. Hillary is the CEO that I've mentioned 100 times already. The helpline is developed by listening to what our callers tell us that they want or need. One of those needs is to speak to them in a language that they understand and use. And you know, that links into what I say about how Nacoa gave me the autonomy to explore and use whatever I felt like I wanted to use, right? You know, I remember, and I look back now, and some of the things that I was saying to Hillary and other helpline counselors and stuff at Nacoa back in the day, right? I can now see that they would have thought, you know, you think and feel that for this reason, but they never grabbed my hand and just yanked me to where I needed to go. They helped me explore it. They gave me the autonomy to use the language that I feel. You know, if I felt like I was angry and I hated somebody, then they gave me the grace to allow myself to have that anger and that hurt and let me know that it makes sense based on my experiences. And what I found is that I'm able to work through those difficult emotions, understand that they come and go and coexist with my positive emotions as well, but give myself the respect, the autonomy, the grace to be able to feel my full range of emotions and know that that doesn't mean that I'm broken. Nacoa taught me that, you know, I didn't need to change, that I didn't need to like become a better person, that actually I needed to find ways to love myself in my full experience. And Hillary says, we diversify our language to ensure as many COAs as possible get help and support. Exactly, right? And they don't feel rejected or anything like that just by using a certain terminology or a certain language. What I started to find, like the more that I was with Nacoa and the more that I was opening up, I think originally when I started making these videos, right, and doing the stuff on coaisatthing.com, I was getting a lot of like love and a lot of validation. I think for a period of time I got quite sort of hooked on that, right? I felt very seen and very heard, and then so that became a little bit of I sort of ran away with that for a bit. But in that as well, I just began to learn about so much of who I am. And I did a lot of like emotional release, a lot of like crying. I began to mourn the loss of my dad when I was 9 years old. I began to mourn the childhood, much of which that I don't remember as a child. And I started to see myself less from a place of shame and more from a place of compassion. Not all the time, but largely speaking, that's what's happened to me over the years. And I started to realize, you know, when you look at like the traits, to talk about some of the traits and the things that children affected by parents drinking suffer with, I actually think a lot of it is like heightened, like bigger wounding of a lot of what is the human experience. So I became a chronic people pleaser, somebody who felt comforted by people that made me work really, really hard to be loved, right? And I can still fall into this trap now, right? Where instead of being who I am around people, I work out who they need me to be. I abandon myself and I become that version that I think that they need me to be. That leaves me feeling very misunderstood all of the time, because I don't communicate my true feelings. I communicate a version at best of my feelings that's going to suit the person that I'm telling it to. And so I'm constantly left in this limbo of feeling like nobody understands me and nobody sees me and nobody gets me. And that is because as a child, I began to build a whole personality and a whole persona around fitting into the environment that I was in, rather than having an environment that felt safe for me to grow and evolve who I was as a child, right? So my personality was built around the ways that the layers that I built up and the ways that I distorted myself so that I could be acceptable within that environment. Now that, in my instance, wasn't because I had two parents that didn't love me or that were bad people. My dad had an addiction struggle and my mum was trapped in those addiction, right? So you can see, if we take a family of people like I was, what I needed was outside influences to help and support me to comprehend my experience, right? So I think sometimes people think that, well, you've got a helpline, that's great, but listen, like, when I was a child, right, what I needed was a space to explore and comprehend my experiences, right? To see the truth of them, so that I could learn that I wasn't the problem. Did I ever directly sit and think, my dad drinks because of me? I don't think I did, no. But I remember thinking, if I could just be good enough at football, if I just work really hard at being football, and I'll support Swindon because that's who he supports, and then maybe he'll see me, you know? And it wasn't even directly as that, but subconsciously that's how I began to build my persona around who I was, right? That childlike wonder, right, of curiosity, right, of being able to explore the world and see how I interact with it. When you grow up in an alcoholic home and a dysfunctional home like that, that goes. It doesn't exist anymore. You begin to learn to distort yourself, right? You begin to learn to change and adapt to fit into the environment. And if your environment is a war zone, then you're going to grow up, right, adapting like the world is a scary place. I grew up, I found men, still I've had to do a lot of work around this, finding men very, very scary. I thought strong men will use their strength to hurt you in the end. That's a core belief that I had inside of me, right? And one that I've had to work. The knowledge itself doesn't take it away because it's within my core being, within my system, right? So I've had to learn to deal with those kind of feelings, the ways in which I interact with the world. And again, that hypervigilance, and I think Jess mentioned in the comments earlier, somebody's put, it says here, if I could just be really good at school, they will value and see me. And I think, by the way, some of the most underreached people in this whole conversation are the ones who desperately try and become good enough when they're at school. And I've had this, you know, I go into schools and sometimes they'll say to me, we want you to work with this young boy. And I'm making this scenario up completely, but it is indicative of some of the stuff that I see. They'll say, we want you to work with this boy. He lives with a parent who's got a problem with alcohol, and he lives with his other sibling, but we want you to work with him. And I say, all right, cool. Why do you want me to work with him? And they say, well, he's getting in trouble. He's like throwing stuff around in class and he gets angry a lot. And I say, all right, cool. Yeah. Like, let's see what we can do. And I say, by the way, what about the other sibling? And they go, odd, you wouldn't believe it, right? They're almost completely unaffected by it. They ace all of their exams. They do really well in school. They're so caring about everybody else, right? And I say, well, why are we not giving them support as well? You just told me that they've got a parent who's trapped in addiction, right? It's ridiculous to believe that they don't need any help and support as well, right? Because one of the ways if you can't feel the love at home for whatever reason, and as a child you don't look and go, oh, my dad's got an addiction problem here and my mum's caught up in that. I mean, that must be really difficult for them, and of course it's not about me. You don't do that. You don't do that when you're a child, right? You just get the message that for some reason I'm not lovable. For some reason I'm not good enough. And so one reaction to that would be, this pain is too much, let me escape, right? And so you might end up using alcohol and drugs and go down that path, right? But another Another way would be to become really, really nice and really, really useful for everybody else, right? And really, really, really good and really likable, right? And of course, these are nice traits and nobody's ever going to call you out on that, right? And I speak to, and I have done over the years, thousands probably of people affected, adult children affected in this way. And what are the things that I hear so regularly from this role, the child who's taken on this role? I have everything I need in life. I shouldn't feel like this. People have it way, way worse than me. I wasn't even treated that bad when we were younger, right? I shouldn't feel like this. I have an amazing job. I have an amazing family. I have all of this, right? And so the guilt that they then feel on top of that, right, means that they're struggling with the same thing. The core wound is the same. I'm not lovable in and of myself. I'm not lovable. And it's important to understand the roles that children take on within these families. And again, look, I've learned all of this from what I've been taught through Nacoa, from originally from doing the Nacoa training, right through to being given the grace, being given the autonomy to search to make sense of my pain, to make sense of my experience. And what I realized from that is that as somebody affected by a parent's drinking, right, even when I was a child, I wasn't given enough respect to be able to begin to make sense of my experience. I think there's a lot of people out there that will, and this has happened to me, that will tell me what's good for me, that will try and fix me. They will say, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do. When what I needed was the autonomy to say, let's explore your experiences. What do you think you need? The person-centered approach where I am at the core of it, with the belief that most people at their core know what's good for them. And it's been a journey for me as an adult to go on, to make sense of a lot of this. And it should have been my right as a child, should have been my right to have my experience made sense of, to have an adult help me make sense of what I was experiencing, and I never had it. And that's down to us as a society, really, to help it. And people say to me, what can we do? How can we make change? Look, listen, here's one place we can start right off the bat, yeah? We can start this right off the bat. The government should fund a charity that has existed for 30 years, that has listened to children affected by this for 30 years, has listened and evolved in a way where the children's needs are at the center of what they do. And so give them funding, help them go out to educate other people that interact with children, so that people can start to understand what the plight of a child is like. Because you see these, there's the meme, there was a meme flying about for a while, and it's like it says two children, alcoholic parent, one's gone on to be a complete success, the other one's, I don't know, homeless or something, and then it says something about life's about choices. No, it's not. That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about. This is about two people growing up in a family and taking on different roles within a family, and so ending up somewhere. Is there an MP's letter template so we can contact and raise awareness? There might be. We've certainly had them in the past for other campaigns, but perhaps this is something that we can look at. And I know Nacoa Piers, who is the communications guy at Nacoa, and he's like the glue of Nacoa. He's the arch that holds Nacoa up. He's everything. He puts the sun thing in Nacoa. That is Piers. He'll be watching this, so maybe that's something for us to think about, and something that we could do so we could carry on to put pressure on the government, because I think it should happen. What about where I'm at? Look, if we've got any questions, start chucking me in some questions. The best way to do the questions, by the way, is to use the Q&A function. But if you don't know how to do that, just put them in the chat, and then I can answer some questions. Currently studying on children's behaviours and how to support them better from an emotional side. We need more people who are trained in this. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we need like a collective approach, right, that helps support children. So like when people say, what can we do for children of alcoholics? I'm like, well, Nacoa are doing it. Let's just fund them properly so they can go out and do their work. That's pretty standard basic stuff that we should be doing. Let me talk a little bit while people might be putting some questions in. Let me just talk a little bit with like where I'm at now. Not long before I found Nacoa, right? I'd stopped drinking for about 9 months sober. Now, for me, when I stopped drinking, I remember thinking that all my problems would go away because my problem was alcohol, right? I've got a problem with alcohol. I need to stop drinking. And what happened is when I stopped drinking and I stopped using alcohol, my life didn't get better. I said it did, but it didn't. And become a Nacoa member, yes. And we do have letters for MPs, amazing. My life didn't get better when I stopped drinking. Internally, it got worse for me. I was left with all of the shame, you know. I walked around feeling like everybody was looking at me. That's shame. That huntsman that walks behind me, following me everywhere I go, saying they're going to find out. They're going to find out exactly who you are. It makes me hide, keeps me alone, stops me sharing who I am with everybody else. And when I don't have alcohol to take that feeling away, I'm left with myself. I had lots of behaviours that I did when I was drinking that I blamed on alcohol. They started creeping back in once the alcohol was gone, and so I couldn't blame alcohol anymore. And I very seriously planned to take my own life when I was about 9 months sober. And I had an experience with my children that changed everything, completely changed everything. Basically, because I knew I was going to die, the past became irrelevant, the future was non-existent, and for the first time ever in my life, I was present with my kids in a way I'd never experienced. And I changed my mind. But more importantly than changing my mind, I sort of had this realization that what was killing me was coming from inside of me. And it was very shortly after that I found Nacoa. And it changed and continues to change my life. At that stage, I was £17,000 in debt when I stopped drinking. I was on a fold-out bed at my mum's house. And I just didn't want to, I didn't want to be here anymore. Fast forward to where I am in my life today. All my debts cleared. I have, I work for myself. I'm doing this amazing work that I get to do. I'm living beyond my wildest dreams in that sense. And if I had to list the things that helped me, Nacoa would be at the top of that. Nacoa would be at the top of that. And that's why, I never want to lose sight of that. And I never want to, it's... With the work that I do, I try and be, as honest as I can about everything. With the work that I do, it's hard not to run away with yourself, right? And start to, become a version of myself that I'm not. Those parts of me take over, of course they do. But everything that I ever thought that kept me alone in this world, right? Nacoa showed me that it connects me to more people than I could ever have imagined. And I think that sense of community that Nacoa bring is what makes Nacoa Nacoa, and I'm so grateful for it. Right, let me, Lucy, 18 months sober, but not feeling right either. Listen, the one thing that I would say about this, it's very easy to look online and see that people get sober and their life gets amazing. If you're like me, stopping drinking doesn't remove the problem. It just removes one of the ways that I was trying to solve the problem, and I was left with the problem. And compassionately over time, I've been able to look at that problem and start to work on it. And I'm just over 10 years in, and I don't think I'm there yet. So I'm glad you're on this live, Lucy. If you hadn't heard of them, I'm glad you're here. Thoughts on grey area drinking. My parents were constantly drinking and labelling it fun. Lots of messy dinner parties and red wine post-work. What are my thoughts on grey area drinking? Look, I'm always wary of any kind of label, because I think we then take it and I think there's great use in self-identifying as a grey area drinker, and I think if that helps you, then that's great. When I was drinking, I probably would have taken that term and used it as a way of suppressing and hiding how bad my relationship is with alcohol, right? But that doesn't mean it's a good term. It means that I will take it and misuse it. So my thoughts on it are, if people ask me, I say look at your relationship with alcohol and ask yourself where you're at with it, very honestly. And I think everybody should do that. I don't think alcohol's bad, by the way. I don't think it's any worse than anything else. I think it's the way that we misuse it that's the problem. That's my personal experience of it. I think there's people that are able to have a relationship with it that, is very low risk of having a negative impact on their life, right? And I think that's fine too. I can tell you that having not drank for over 10 years, I've had loads of addictions. I've had probably more than 1 million in the last week. I sort of say that semi-jokingly, right? But from sugar to helping people to watching TV to not just sugar food, restricting my food, eating too much of my food, my phone, breath work, fitness, football, right? Anything that gets me to not have to sit with myself, yeah? So alcohol was it for 10 years. And people say to me, do you think about alcohol anymore? And the answer is no. But that doesn't mean that I don't get to a stage where I just don't see alcohol as the crutch anymore. But that doesn't mean that I don't use things that don't particularly serve me. I do. So for me, it's more about the pain and my constant desire to run away from the ways that I feel. So that's my beliefs around that. I can't believe we've been going for 48 minutes. Just shows you once I get talking about Nacoa. I've got a few more minutes if there's any more questions that are coming in. A massive thank you for the donations that have come in. It's amazing. So interesting. I think validating myself and my experiences has become more powerful than labels. Yeah, and I think whatever way that we use to validate it should be what we use. I don't think that telling people what they shouldn't and can't say is normalizing a conversation. I think what normalizes a conversation is giving people the right to use what works for them. And I think we'd all do a lot better to allow people to use whatever language they need and want that helps them. And we use the language that we need and want that helps us. And if it angers us that somebody else is using a certain language, then it perhaps points to some struggle within us rather than the language being wrong. And I think that's true on a societal level as well, because society's always using new terms, yeah? Because they'll say this one's become stigmatized, and it only becomes stigmatized because it's been used for so long, I think. Food is a massive addiction for me since coming into sobriety. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. The shame cycles that I get in with food are crazy, and I never used to get in them when I was drinking. Thank you for being so open, raw, and real, inspiring. Thank you. What I would say about that, by the way, because I get plaudits for this a lot, and this is not me it probably is a little bit of me deflecting the compliment a little bit, because I'll always do that. Or I sort of recognise that I always want to do that. But what I also do say, because I think this is important as well, is that for me to be vulnerable like this on my own in a room in front of a camera is very different from me being vulnerable in the presence of people in an intimate conversation. So even standing on stage and doing it in front of people takes huge courage, takes huge strength. Hats off to everybody that does it. But it is different from me sitting in, a group of two, or sitting across the table from my wife and openly talking about the ways I feel. There's difference. And the latter is harder because trauma plays out in my relationships. Yeah, because trauma for me is the wound of the way that I experience how I love myself and how I love other people. You see what I'm saying? Is there any help for adult children? My mother passed 6 weeks ago, age 60. Her drinking began around 12, 15 years ago, and I tried to help many times. I'm 43. I hear you, Shelley. Firstly, it was never your duty to try, to save them. Try as you would have done. But Nacoa absolutely is here to help you. So a big percentage of the people that interact with and use the helpline for Nacoa are adults. And what I would say is I think what a lot of those adults do is that they become involved. And this is what I did. I sort of used the helpline and the people within Nacoa to explore my own experiences. And then, allowing myself to become part of the Nacoa community and feeling sort of part of that and a sense of belonging in that in and of itself became the healing. So I hope that helps. There's another question in here. My husband is a sober alcoholic raised by an alcoholic. My husband had OCD. His checklists are what I think he uses to feel loved by himself. His accomplishment. Excuse me. Am I correct? Look, I wouldn't say that I am in a position to be able to tell you whether you're correct or incorrect. But I sort of think that you're justified in thinking and feeling what you feel as a result of what your husband experiences. And perhaps if you feel like it, then maybe it's worth exploring the links in those things with a curiosity, not with judgment, but just with a curiosity to see where it goes. That's what I would say to that. Feel out of breath. I'm going to wrap this up. Right, what I'll do, I'm going to do this, right? The donations is telling me that it's on £96.51. Can we get that up to 100? I don't even know how we do that. Am I able to thank the people? Oh, okay. Thank you, Kim. I can't see half of the names. It's glitching. But thank you everybody that's done. Why is that not showing? It showed me the top one and the rest are not loading. Maybe it's my signal. But thank you everybody. I've really, really enjoyed this. Let me finish by saying, desperately need a way out of myself and into a happy life, and I have an alcoholic father and husband, and I'm on my time after divorcing. Thank you, Debbie. What I would say is use Nacoa. Definitely get on the helpline, send them an email. You'll be surprised. I think what a lot of us do is we think, it's amazing that this support is there for people. It's great that it's there for kids, but we sort of don't feel like we should interact with it ourselves. Take a chance on contacting Nacoa and see what it might do for you. Nacoa's website is nacoa.org.uk. I would encourage everybody to go and look at the website, what Piers and the team and everybody else has been able to do in building that website out as being a real sort of central hub for anyone affected by parents drinking. It's incredible, so go and check it out. There's loads of personal experiences on there. Follow Nacoa at Nacoa UK on Instagram. Follow them on TikTok. Follow them on Facebook. And if you can, become a member. It's a very small yearly fee, and they are the life of Nacoa. Members are the life of Nacoa. And I don't know if I should be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've been chatting with Piers. We want to build out a little bit some of the benefits of being a member so that, we can help you find ways to become and feel real part of the community. We've had another donation come in. That's amazing. It is up over £100 now, or it is pound. Yeah, it was saying dollars earlier. It'd probably be better if it was in dollars now, wouldn't it? I'm not going to go off on a political tirade about the pound. I've really enjoyed this. I don't know. Maybe what we could do is, make it more regular. We'll find a way. What'll be good is there'll be lots of content that we can use out of this as well to further reach more people that deserve to hear this, because with 1 in 5 children living with a parent that drinks hazardously, everybody should know who Nacoa are. Everybody should have the right to know that. And the more that we can keep banging the drum, if you feel comfortable to do it, share Nacoa stuff from the page on your things. And it'll be amazing. It's been great, Josh. Please do more lives. Yeah, I do try and do one a week. I'm not very good at doing one a week. I probably do 1 or 2 a month. This was a Nacoa specific one, so it's brilliant. And maybe we'll revisit the Nacoa lunchtime lives in the future as well, because they were always really well received. So maybe we'll pick that up. But thank you. This goes on the grid as well now, so it'll be there to watch back. And I'll see if I can get it on YouTube as well. Thanks, everyone.